problem is, for most of us, is that it is psychologically challenging to stand in the face of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, accelerating change, isn't it? I mean, when I do the things that I do, oftentimes I'm stepping into the unknown. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. And most of us are not comfortable with that. And for the most part, what we do in the face of our discomfort, because it's our own psychological discomfort. Is it okay if we talk about psychology and emotions here today? Is that all right? We have to, don't we? I mean, if we are going to be truly innovative, we have to start with what it's like for us and how can we elevate the way that we think. How can we elevate our ability to stand in the face of our own anxiety when we don't know what's going to happen next? So what do? We try to get things under control. We put control processes. We put rules. We put policies. We create standards. We create laws. We kind of regulate the way that we relate with one another. And I would call this a kind of a predict and plan approach. Predict and plan in the sense that we are predicting, we have the illusion, because remember, we're standing in the face of volatility, uncertainty, accelerating change, and ambiguity, and we live in the illusion that we can predict, in the face of all that, we can predict the future, on the basis of that prediction, make plans. It's not us doing this. Okay, this is where it starts to get a little bit more complex. So I'm going to ask you to stay with this, all right? So, because it's not us doing this predict and plan thing, it's it doing us. So I know this is, I promise that we're going to work this out, okay? And we're going to have to do a little bit of work here because we have to think in a different way to get this, all right? So, it's kind of like an inner operating system. You know, like when I take out my phone, wherever it is, when I take out my phone, I'm using all these different apps and I'm doing all this stuff and I'm making phone calls and I'm reading the news and I'm checking my email. I am completely unaware that there is an operating system operating on my phone. I don't know that until it starts harassing me to say I need to upgrade my operating system, because if I don't upgrade my operating system, pretty soon some of those apps won't work very well. Right? Have you noticed that? So we as human beings are kind of like that. We have an inner operating system which determines which apps can run, which things we're able to comfortably do, and which apps we cannot run, which kinds of things we cannot comfortably do. That inner operating system determines all of that. So, if what we're up to is creating innovation, bringing about innovation, we're going to need to upgrade that inner operating system, because most of us, for the most part, operate in a predict and plan kind of mode. Raise your hand if that's true for you. And if you're not raising your hand, you're lying. You're unaware of the operating system that's running in you. Believe me, for the most part, and I've been doing a lot of inner work on this, for the most part, I operate on a predict and plan operating system. It takes something to move us to a different kind of operating system that we need in order to be innovative. By the way, I'm purposely talking somewhat slowly and introducing pauses to help the translator. How's the translation going for people? Is it okay? I can't. Just raise your hand if it seems to be thumbs up, Yes, seems to be going well? Okay, great. All right. So, we need to upgrade our inner operating system from a predict and plan to something else, something that I am calling sense and respond. Now, coming from a sense and so it's like we need to upgrade the operating system, and a sense and respond operating system makes it possible for us to be able to stand in the face of the volatility, the complexity, the ambiguity, and to be able to create in the face of that. So by upgrading our inner operating system, which is the way that we make sense of the world, the way that we see things, the way that we think, if we upgrade that inner operating system, it becomes possible to function, to operate in the VUCA world that we live in with greater satisfaction, a sense of excitement. Actually, operating in a VUCA world is exciting. It's actually the source of joyful creation, I would assert. And many of us feel that oftentimes, but we don't have any real mastery around that. So I want to start to talk about what sense and respond looks like. What's the nature of this new operating system that we're talking about here? All right. So I want to first talk about it within the context of product management. So a product management company. Now this is about our own personal development, but it's the source of how product companies can get better at being innovative and operating in a VUCA world. So we start with the application layer. By the application layer, that's kind of like, on our iPhones, all of the apps that we run and all of the things that we do with our iPhone. We're talking about this within the context of a product development company. So here are the applications that we try to run if we're trying to create a more agile, more adaptive, more innovative organization. And one of the pieces here is what we call delivery agility. How many people have heard of Scrum, Kanban, those kinds of things, right? So these are well-known agile process frameworks that help us be able to deliver software in a way that is more responsive, that is more adaptive, that is more customer-oriented. And these are well known. They're done all over the world. I've been involved in this since the very beginning. Since there was only one agile book. It was Kent Beck's Extreme Programming Explained. So that's just one piece. The other piece is operational agility, which is things like extreme programming, agile engineering practices, DevOps. How many people have heard of DevOps? How many people have heard of these things? So another piece of this, in terms of the application layer, is customer agility, which is where very much inspired by the whole lean startup movement. So rather than trying to figure out what your customer wants from the very beginning, you actually work iteratively, working with the customer. And you don't find all the answers at the very beginning. That's customer agility. And then more recently, we've had this whole wave around business agility, where we're applying agility frameworks and thinking to just about any aspect of an organization. Underneath all of that, to make all of that work, we have human behaviors, things that people are doing. So for instance, you have people working more collaboratively with each other. You have people focusing on how can we get results out? How can we, talking more to the customers. There's a lot more talking, a lot more interaction going on. So it's a different mode of behaving required if what we want to do is create an agile organization. And then meanwhile, we want to create organizational structures, right, that make it possible for us as an organization to be more adaptive, to be more innovative, right? So this is a really tall order, isn't it? to actually be able to do all of this kind of stuff, to create a highly adaptive organization. All of this is in the domain of what we do. So if I'm an alien, if I kind of beam myself down to planet Earth and I walk into this company and I'm watching and I'm seeing that these are the things that people are doing, that companies and organizations are doing, and this is the realm of what we might call outer agility. This is where we focus about 90% of our attention in the agile world, in the business agility world. But that's just like, it's like focusing all of our attention on the apps. We need to also focus a lot more on the operating system on which all of this runs. So at the top of that operating system are the skills and competencies that people have. For instance, in order to be able to behave in a way in which we're collaborating with each other, we need to get pretty good at communication, don't we? If we're focusing on delivering customer value, we have to get really good at widening our lens. We can't be so focused on just this software problem. We have to be able to see the entire business context. So it's a different kind of set of skills and competencies we need to grow within us. And so these are the things that we can do, right? These are the things that we're able to do. And so we can have people go to trainings and, get mentoring and even some degree of coaching to learn these things, yeah? Isn't it true that we can actually learn this kind of stuff? You can shake your head no. You may not agree. What I notice is that, because something I've done a lot of over the years is helping people develop these kinds of competencies, these kinds of skills. And what I notice is that it can be really hard for people. That somehow people reach a certain limit as to how much they're actually able to learn about how to do this stuff, because there's another layer underneath all of this. This is kind of like the inner kernel of the operating system, the hidden layer, and I call it hidden because it's, for the most part, we're unaware of this dimension of our own selves. And there are lots of ways to talk about this. And I'm going to focus on 4 different aspects of this hidden layer. The first one is our beliefs. Now, I'm not talking about what we say we believe in. For instance, I could say that I believe in open communication. I really do. I can say that, right? But what I really believe is that if I open my trap at the wrong moment, I will get into some trouble. So that's what I really believe. What I really believe is if I speak up at a meeting and say the wrong thing or say it in the wrong way, that I could get into trouble. How many people can relate to that? So now that's not a belief I espouse. It's not a belief that I have. That's a belief that has me. In other words, I'm unaware that that belief is driving my behavior, but it is. And we have lots of those kinds of beliefs operating, of which for the most part we're unaware. So that's one aspect of this hidden layer. Another aspect is our assumptions. Boy, do I get bit by my assumptions with my wife. Almost like several an hour even. And my wife is really good at pointing that out. My wife is very good at pointing out all of my little peccadillos, right? And this is one of them. I assume all kinds of things. I'm pretty sure I'm not alone, by the way. This is not a personal rain shower, right? The rain doesn't just happen on me. The rain is happening on all of us. And one characteristic of the rain that's happening on all of us is that we make assumptions and we are unaware of the assumptions we're making because we're not making them, they're making us. Those assumptions make us. They determine what we say, what we do, how we interact with other people, and we're completely oblivious. It's like the app that's running on top of an operating system, and we don't know that that operating system is even there. All right, so a couple more to go here, right? Are you guys getting the sense of this? Kinda, yeah, a little bit. All right, some of you, yes. By the way, it's okay if you don't completely understand this conceptually. So when I say get it, when I ask, are you getting it? I don't mean, do you understand it in such a way that you could explain it to your spouse when you go home tonight? I mean, does it kind of like make sense in a way for you? Even though you can't quite explain it, that's what I mean by get it. And if you're getting it, that is like way sufficient for this conversation. All right, so the next part of this is our inner theories. I'm not talking about the theories that we espouse, but I'm talking about the theories in a sense that espouse us. For instance, you can think of a theory is really an explanatory framework that helps us understand things. Right? It helps us sort through the complexity. So for instance, we have inner theories about what motivates people. We have inner theories about how social systems work. We have inner theories about the nature of relationships. I have theories about my wife and about why she is the way that she is. And again, for the most part, we are unaware of these theories, those inner theories, and yet they determine how we behave. They determine what we're able to do. And then finally, we have those emotional triggers. You know, somebody says something to you, or you're driving along the road and someone cuts you off, and we get angry. Or maybe we get anxious. Something happens, somebody says something to us, somebody does something to us, and it triggers an emotional response, and it's involuntary. It's like when someone hits your knee and your leg goes up like that. It's completely involuntary. So these are all aspects of how we make sense. It's the deep kernel operating system that determines our behavior and our performance. More accurately, we could say how sense makes us. And this is the realm that I refer to as inner agility. How we make sense, or how sense makes us, determines what we can do. And what we can do determines what we do. And so you could say that inner agility, the way that I'm talking about it here, determines outer agility. We can only get so far with outer agility until we have to start to upgrade the operating system. So outer agility is adding new apps, but at some point those apps don't run because we're trying to run those apps on a predict and plan operating system. We need to upgrade that inner operating system to a sense and respond operating system. So let's just look at a little example of how this works. Here's one behavior. So we've been mentioning collaboration. So we collaborate. So this is one behavior we expect to see in an innovative, agile sort of organization. People collaborating. All right. So the competencies that are needed. One is that we can communicate skillfully with one another. We're able to communicate in such a way that we can be understood, that we can understand the other person, we're empathetic, all of that kind of stuff. Another skill and competency we need to bring on board in order to be able to collaborate is we can receive and give useful feedback. This is one of the hardest things to do in companies, is to give and receive feedback. We really suck at it. We're not good at either receiving feedback or giving feedback. And so this is a skill. So when I go into companies and help people become more agile, these are among the skills that we teach people. Another one is how to manage conflict. So conflict is nothing other than to be able to express our differences with one another. So we need conflict, but we're not very good at dealing with conflict. And so dealing with conflict skillfully is something is a competency or skill we need to get good at. The thing is that we cannot really develop these kinds of skills unless something else happens at this deeper level, the sense that's making us. And the first of these is that I am genuinely open to receiving others emotionally. In other words, I have a genuine care for another person, and that I'm sensitive to that other person's emotions, and I care about them, even if they're different than my own. Like, this is something that I've really had to learn to do with my wife, for instance, is that the way that she is emotionally is very different than me. The things that upset her or concern her are very different than me. And to the degree that I can be sensitive to that in another person, I then become much better able to communicate with that person. So that's one sort of inner capability. Another one is that I can let go of my attachment to how it should be. You know, we have these ideas in any given moment about how something should be, especially when we care a lot about something. How many people relate to that? Like, you know, we care about how this thing is going to go, right? And we develop an attachment to a certain way that looks. And an inner capability we need to be able to develop in ourselves, if we're going to be able to collaborate with others, is a willingness to let go of those attachments. All right? I'm aware of my emotional triggers and can move around them. So for instance, I get triggered all the time. I mean, I go through the airport, I travel, I do all this kind of stuff, and something happens that triggers me. And to the degree that I can notice the trigger in myself, oh wow, something that person said triggered me, rather than kind of blurting out a reaction, I can manage that reaction and respond to this person or the situation in a way that is more useful, more constructive. I know myself and I can hold my own. So for instance, I know my strengths and I know my limitations, and so I'm unafraid to stand on my own when I'm pretty sure that the way that I'm seeing this is useful for this moment. How many people have a hard time kind of standing up for yourself? Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I know this is kind of like a gentle topic, right? But I know I do. I mean, to do what I'm doing now, like standing in front of a group of 500 people like this, would have been unheard of for me, say, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So it's a way of knowing our own capabilities and standing up for it. And then finally, I can dance with complexity and volatility, uncertainty. You know, when something's happening that I didn't expect, it's this ability to be able to stand and dance with that. Okay, so it's this stuff that we need to get better at. Now, the thing is that we can do it. So Evolve Agility is the name of a book that I wrote last year. And it's a word that a business partner of mine made up to capture a kind of human technology that helps us get at this deeper operating system, to help us develop those deeper capabilities within ourselves. So I want to define Evolve Agility because it's a strange enough word and a strange enough idea that we want to, just have a grasp on what it is. So Evolve Agility is the activity. So keep following along. By the way, I'm not going to be talking for too much longer. I'm going to hear from some of you in a moment. So Evolve Agility is the activity and the practices we engage in and the philosophical perspective we adopt in order to grow within ourselves sense and respond capability. Okay, so the key vehicle for Evolve Agility is what I'm calling deliberate sense making. And deliberate sense making has two sort of things that it allows us to do. The first thing that it allows us is it helps us to reveal those inner beliefs, those inner assumptions, those inner theories, those inner triggers, in order to create more awareness around them. So the first step to all of this is to create awareness. It's really hard to do this by ourselves. These are practices that are done with other people. The second piece, or the other thing that it helps us to do, to the degree that we can become aware of those triggers, of those inner theories, we can move beyond them, we can transcend them, and take action that is born out of something other than those.